Hello, everybody. Welcome to Women in Criminal Justice. This is week one. It's the start of this class. It's not a very big class, and that kind of makes it nice, but it also puts a little more um, on you to be on time because we all need to have your discussions in. And that's one of the things we're going to discuss today. The discussions have changed somewhat from the last classes we've had. Now, some of you have had me before, and the word count was 250 for your discussion and 150 words for your responses. That has changed. So we're going to go over that in just a second. Right now I want to talk about how I need to have these in Thursday 11:59. If they don't come in at 11:59 by 11:59 on Thursday night, what will happen is you will not get any credit for that. What you will get credit for is don't give up. You can do your responses and you can get up to 60% of your grade. And trust me, that makes a big difference in the end. So you can get up to 60% if you, for some reason, can't get your discussion in. I can tell you that they've given me really no leeway on that, and legitimately so, because we need you to put those discussions in so we can all feed off of them. I will also be feeding off of them, and you can always, sometimes I take the opposite stance. It may not be what I truly believe, but there are two sides to every coin, and we need to have both sides in there. So I may put something in there that may be controversial, and you might think, oh my God, this Professor Figgy is really out to lunch. But I may put it in there just for you to have thought on what some people are thinking. And it may or may not be what I think. I just want you to know you can always feed off of that. You can always write off of that as well, because there is only a very small group in this class. So I said our discussions are going to be different. And this week we're going to be talking about, you're going to do your discussion prompt is going to be based on what you've learned about gender and gender socialization. Discuss different gender stereotypes associated with crime and criminal justice professions in relation to both men and women. Now, you've been given an awful lot of material in here. All your material is within this class, so that's really good. They've given you everything that you need. There is no specific book for this class, but you always, and I would encourage you to use other sources. And make sure whatever source you use, whether it's the one that was given here or the one that you're going to use, that make sure that you put that in your discussion, attach that to your discussion. It does not um, count as like word count, but we're not doing word count. But I do need you to put it in there, anything that you have for your discussion, your sources, as well as your responses. So one of the things I really want to get across to you is we need to be very respectful of each other in this class. Sometimes it can get controversial, and I typically teach some controversial classes, as some of you know because you've been in my class. We just need to be respectful of each other. Everybody has a right to their own opinion, and if you are adamant against somebody's opinion, use your words to tell them why, showing backing it up. So that takes us right to what the CR discussion, their new rubric is. So this is the discussion board guidelines. Your participation is necessary. We've gone over that. We need that, and other people need to feed off of that. Um, we always talk about being respectful, and I have yet to have a class where somebody isn't respectful, and I so appreciate that. Um, the second thing we need to talk about, the third paragraph on this is, your post has to be 2 to 3 paragraphs of your own thoughts and ideas, along with implementing citing sources from that week. So you can use the sources and you can add sources, but you must cite them, and it's at least 2 to 3 paragraphs. So if you send me 50 words in a paragraph and there's no meat to it, there's no real sustenance to it, then what's going to happen is you're going to get a bad grade. And I don't want anybody to get a bad grade. So it also happens that I'm hoping to have growth with you. And I think we've seen that in a lot of our classes. And to have growth, you have to read and you have to go forward. I just want you to know that I'm reading exactly what you're reading. I'm adding as well, and you can add. And I will send you some of the things that I found that I think that are interesting. Now, when you get to the comment section of it, when you're doing the next comment, and I've had this happen, you all have had this happen in your own as well, as where you've had somebody, hey, I really thought what you wrote was great, you really write really well. Thank you for putting your opinion down. And that's it. And you're like, no, no, no. You have to tell us. You can agree, but tell us why you agree. You can disagree, but tell us why you disagree. Or if you say, oh, yeah, I thought of that and I saw this. All right, so when you put your comments in, make sure that you have some meat to them. You got to have some sustenance, meaning avoid any posts that are just like, I agree, you're a really great, student to read from, or you're really, professor, I really liked what you wrote. Trust me, some of the times I don't like the things I write. I write them just so I give you another side. So feel free to say, Professor Figgy, that is a really horrible idea, and this is why. Okay? So moving on, the next thing we have a written paper. Now, one of the things before I get into the written paper, I want to make sure that when you are doing your assignments, that you look at your rubrics. So one of the things on the rubric for the discussion that's really important, and people overlook this rubric, all part of the rubric all the time, it's more than 3 responses, more than 3. So if you want to get the perfect grade, you got to do 4 responses. 4. So read the rubric, see what's expected of you. If you have any questions on that, feel free to call me. The next thing I want to talk to you about is going to be your topic of writing. And your topic of writing is going to be, that's a discussion. We're going to go to the module, which is, believe it or not, I have this here for you. You're going to write on is both school of thought and practical field. So you're going to write on the different ideas that are here during the 60s and 70s and forward. You're going to write, there's radical feminism, liberal feminism, Marxist feminism, and you can certainly look them up. And your assignment is to discuss the 3 major feminist theories. Now, there are other feminist theories as well. Explore what they have to say about men, women, and women's position in society. Understand how feminism is connected to criminal justice. Discuss what the 3 major feminist theories would argue about crime and the reasons for it. Examine the connection between feminist theories, understanding crime, and its gendered nature. Now, this is really a good discussion, but it's going to be a paper. I've looked at this and I've had this in classes before. And one of the things that people say, why are more women getting arrested? It's an interesting thought. Why are more women getting arrested? Why are more women committing crimes? And I cringe when I hear this, but I still to this day will hear people say, and people who are in law enforcement, people in the courts, she just didn't act like a lady. Somebody's got to define to me what acting like a lady is. I can tell you that over the years, the 32 years that I was a police officer, I'm going to go just a little bit before that. Prior to that, I was a security officer at Bay State West, which is now the Tower Squares. And I was hired with another person the same day. We both hired to do the exact same job. We both did the exact same training, and we both did the exact same hours. He got paid $160 a week more than I did. And when I asked why he got paid $160 more a week, I was told it was because he had the man's job and I had the female job. So I had to take that to the Mass Commission Against Discrimination. And back then, believe it or not, the Mass Commission Against Discrimination was pretty much a lame duck organization. And they agreed that I was wrong. And Mass Mutual owned the company. Mass Mutual was my boss. And they made them pay me forward, but they refused to make them pay me back. And it took almost a year and a half to get where my salary should be. So it's not that long ago, ladies. It's not that long ago that happened. Then when I became a police officer, in 1985, I became pregnant and I was fired. And I was fired because my chief said women need to stay home with their children. And I had to get an attorney. 1985. Then fast forward 1989, my daughter came along. I had to get a doctor's note every 10 days to show that I was able to do the duties of a police officer, which meant that I needed to be able to go out and handle fights. I had to go out and handle every aspect of police work. At this point, my doctor got really mad one day and she wrote, "For goodness sakes, pregnancy is a sign of good health, not a sign of bad health. Get over yourself." And I went, oh no, I got to give this to my chief. This is not going to be pretty. And I just went in there and said, I don't control what she writes, but I do agree with what she writes. I'm in good health. So, moving forward, we are now into 2020. And how have things changed, or how have they not changed? I look at the sad passing of Ruth Ann Ginsburg this week, and I'm like, my heart breaks for that, because she was such a proponent for women's rights. But by doing it, by going for women's rights, she went for people rights. She went for men's rights too, and that's how she got it across. And if any of you want to put her in your paper this week, I would so appreciate that in honor of her, because we are so lucky that we had her. There's so many things that she's been able to give us, and that might be interesting to look at as well. So moving on, your paper, look at your thing. It must be 4 to 5 pages. Okay, that means not 3.5. That means you have to have a cover sheet. Then you have to have 4 to 5 pages of guts, of contents. You must have 4 to 5 pages. Not 3.5, not 3 3/4, not triple spaced, not bold type. All of this has happened, by the way. Not a full page of graphs. If you're going to put a graph in, I will only allow you to count that as a half a page. You can put as many as you want, but it's only going to be allowed to be counted as a half a page. So you must have 4 to 5 pages of content. You must have 2 sources, and you must put those sources on your final page, which is not part of your 4 to 5 pages. Any questions on that? Please feel free to ask me. Now, as I'm closing, it's 11 minutes. I want to have you watch some of the things that have really meaningful to me. And we're going to start with this. And you're going to have to look at my face during it, but it's only 4 minutes.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. No, that's not the Declaration of Independence. It's actually from the Declaration of Sentiments, a document signed at the first ever Women's Rights Convention in 1848. Back then, women in the U.S. weren't allowed to do a lot of things men were, like vote, and it would take them another 70 years to be granted that fundamental right. Why? Well, many thought encouraging women's involvement in politics would undermine society. The prospect of women voting was threatening to the white men who held power. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott decided to organize factions across the country that were campaigning for suffrage, or the right to vote. The convention at Seneca Falls, New York addressed women's rights and inspired other conventions and meetings. Stanton considered it the beginning of the women's rights movement. After the Civil War, the 15th Amendment was introduced, which would give black men, but not women of any color, the right to vote. Suffragists were split. Stanton and Susan B. Anthony opposed the amendment, objecting to the exclusion of women. They formed the National Women's Suffrage Association, hoping to pass a constitutional amendment that included women. Others, like abolitionists Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell, supported the 15th Amendment. They founded the American Women's Suffrage Association and lobbied for the women's right to vote on a state level instead of through a national amendment. The 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870. Black men could vote, but women still couldn't. In 1878, a women's suffrage amendment penned by Susan B. Anthony was finally proposed in Congress, but it was defeated on the Senate floor in 1887. In 1890, the separate suffrage movements merged, opting to tackle suffrage by state in the wake of the federal amendment's defeat. Within 6 years, Colorado, Utah, and Idaho granted women the right to vote. Wyoming had already done it in 1869. Around the same time, the National Association of Colored Women was formed, bringing together more than 100 black women's clubs. It included leaders Mary Church Terrell, Josephine Silent Yates, and Anna Julia Cooper. By the turn of the 20th century, the women's suffrage movement had gained renewed momentum. Parades, marches, and pickets drew great attention to the cause. Between 1910 and 1918, a number of states and territories expanded voting rights to women. In 1912, 15,000 suffrage supporters took to the streets of New York City. But as women's political power grew, so did the danger they